Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Anupma, Professor at Department of Economics, Punjabi University, Patiala. I am going to talk about the module analyzing how existing urban areas came to be developed from population, urbanization and poverty. So students, we are going to discuss about the determinants of growth of urban areas. We will also discuss the modern features of existing urban areas. Existing urban areas have a long and complex history. During the 4th millennium BC, the requirements of the urban revolution were finally met. The production of a surplus of storable food, a system of writing, a more complex social organization, and technological advances such as plough, potter's wheel, loom, and metallurgy. However, the first true urban settlements are believed to have appeared around 3000 BC in ancient Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley. The cities in ancient times are believed to be the centers of trade, administration, religion, and military powers, while little description is found about the residential planning in the cities in the ancient times, and it is believed that the history of organized city planning is 4 centuries younger than the city itself. But still, we can find the records of city planning according to the strategic needs and the needs of the traders, and the residential segment of the cities was automatically planned. In the buildings of ancient Rome and Greece, we can easily find the examples of good planning for drainage systems that is found to be planned according to the natural surroundings. The basic question is whether the cities were consciously planned or they grew organically. So first of all, let us look at the aims of this module. This module aims to throw light on a brief history of growth of urban areas, the specific reasons of growth of the cities, the urban growth models, old and new urban forms, networks and networked communities, urban spaces and mass production, modern features of residential urban areas, and globalization and rise of the megacities. Greek cities did not follow a single pattern of land use planning. The cities grew slowly from old villages and often displayed an irregular organic form that would adapt to a given area's topography and history. Greek colonial cities, however, were known to be planned prior to settlement using the grid system. The grid system divides urban land into uniform rectangular lots suitable for development and was and still is easy to both lay out and navigate. Similarly, the Romans engaged in extensive city building activities as they consolidated their empire. Rome itself displayed the informal complexity created by centuries of organic growth, although particular temple and public districts were highly planned. In contrast, the Roman military and colonial towns were laid down in a variation of the grid. One of the most striking extant Roman grid patterns can be found in the ruins of Timgad in modern-day Algeria. The Roman grid is characterized by a nearly perfectly orthogonal layout of streets, all crossing each other at right angles, and by the presence of 2 main streets set at right angles from each other. Thus, the growth of the cities had actually depended upon the purpose for which they came into being. A specific purpose has led to the planned growth, while the natural growth of towns as the neighborhoods of the villages or the main cities followed the path of organic growth. Therefore, it is important to find the specific reasons of the growth of a city. Specific reasons of growth of the cities. Cities exist for many reasons, and the diversity of urban forms can be traced to the complex functions that cities perform. These are centers of non-agricultural activities. These are the religious centers. These are the strategic centers. These are the centers of government, and these are the centers of arts and intelligence. Now we can discuss these functions one by one. Number 1. Cities as center of non-agricultural activities. Cities serve as centers of storage, trade, and manufacture. The agricultural surplus from the surrounding city side is processed and distributed in cities. Cities also grew up around marketplaces where goods from distant places could be exchanged for local products. Throughout history, cities have been founded at the intersections of transportation routes or at points where goods must shift from one mode of transportation to another, as at river and ocean ports. Number 2, the religious centers. The religious element have been crucial throughout the urban history. The ancient people had sacred places often associated with cemeteries or shrines around which cities grew. Ancient cities usually had large temple precincts with monumental religious buildings. Many medieval cities were built near monasteries and cathedrals. Number 3, the strategic centers. Cities often provide protection in a precarious world. During attacks, the rural populace could flee behind city walls, where defense forces assembled to repel the enemy. The walls served this purpose for millennia until the invention of heavy artillery rendered walls useless in the warfare. Number 4. Centers of government. Cities serve as center of government. In particular, the emergence of great nation states of Europe between 1400 and 1800 AD led to the creation of new capital cities or the investing of existing cities with expanded governmental functions. Number 5. Center of arts and intelligentsia. Cities with their connection of talent, mixture of people and economic surplus have provided a fertile ground for the evolution of human culture, the arts, scientific research and technical innovation. They serve as centers of communication where new ideas and information are spread to the surrounding territory and to the foreign lands. Urban growth models. Though we all know and experience the structures of a modern city several times in our lives, even if we are not living in a city, but we rarely come across a plan of a city in recent past, or say the post-industrial revolution era. Therefore, it is interesting to look at some idealized forms which imply different degrees of planning from Abercrombie's work on town and city planning. This is shown in figure 2. The figure shows that the urban growth in the first half of the 20th century was visualized as the gridiron plan or the radial plan. The cellular growth is based upon the growth affected by immediate neighborhood. Therefore, in such type of growth of the city, all the buildings, the commercial or the residential centers, may not be connected with each other. They show the characteristics of neighborhoods to certain areas or specific activities that may or may not be attracted with other areas or activities in the city. On the other hand, radial growth of the city takes two forms, one through natural growth and another through a controlled and planned growth, which is termed as spider's web. Thus, in the original models of growth of the city, the spider web model was more accepted due to its better connectivity and land use as compared to other models. Another approach is to have concentric zone model, the sector model, and the multiple nuclei models. The concentric growth model is shown in figure 3. The concentric growth model was given by sociologist Ernest Burgess in 1923. According to this model, the growth of the city can be described in terms of a concentric ring. This model states that the city grows outward in concentric rings. The city has a single center, otherwise known as CBD, that is Central Business District. Around the business center is an area of older industry, and beyond that are the residential areas. It is assumed that the poor cannot afford to commute long distances, and also that they must live in the older and cheaper houses near the center. The wealthy live in commuter zone outside the city proper. The sector model. This model is given by Hyatt. This model recognizes the existence of land use zones but suggests that there are sectors or wedges of land uses in the city due to the emergence of star-shaped transportation routes such as bus lines and streetcar lines. As such, the industrial area would lie in a sector along the rail lines coming into the city center. The poorer people live adjacent to industrial areas near their jobs, while the rich live on the opposite side of the town, far away from the industry, and poor and the middle income households live in between the low class and high class residential areas. The third one is multiple nuclei model. The multiple nuclei model is given by Chauncey Harris and Edward Uleman in 1945. According to this model, although the growth of the city may have begun from the central business district, but soon other smaller CBDs develop on the outskirts of the city or away from the center. This creates several nodes or nuclei in other parts of the city. Thus, this model is the refinement of first two but incorporates outlying shopping malls, industrial areas, and large residential suburbs. This type of city can be developed only with use of automobiles and with increase in transport and communication facilities. The CBDs no longer can maintain a monopoly on retail and commercial activities since outlying malls and industrial parks compete with them. The industry also moves on the edge of the city where land is cheaper. Thus, we have observed that with modern growth of physical capital in terms of infrastructure facilities and financial capital, the existing urban areas are no longer following the concentric ring model. They are more of the multiple nuclei shapes. Now, let us discuss about old and new urban forms. The first true urban settlements appeared around 3000 BC in ancient Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley. Ancient cities displayed both organic and plant types of urban forms. These societies had elaborate religious, political, and military hierarchies. Areas devoted to the activities of the elite were often highly planned and regular in form. In contrast, residential areas often grew by a slow process of accretion, producing complex, irregular pattern that we term organic. Two typical features of the ancient city are the wall and the citadel. The wall for defense in regions periodically swept by conquering armies, and the citadel, a large elevated precinct within the city devoted to religious and state functions. We usually associate medieval cities with narrow winding streets converging on a market square with a citadel and city hall. During the Renaissance, architects began to systematically study the shaping of urban space as though the city itself were a piece of architecture that could be given an aesthetically pleasing and functional order. Parts of old cities were rebuilt to create elegant squares, long street vistas, and symmetrical building arrangements. Responding to advances in firearms during the 15th century, new city walls were designed with large earthwork to deflect artillery and star-shaped points to provide defenders with sweeping lines of fire. However, towards the latter half of the 18th century, the city as a setting for commerce assumed primacy. The buildings of the bourgeoisie expand along with the owner's prosperity. Banks, office buildings, warehouses, hotels, and small factories. New towns founded during this period were conceived as commercial enterprises, and the neutral grid was the most effective means to divide land up into parcels for sale. The city became a checkboard on which the players speculated on shifting land values. No longer would religious, political, and cultural imperatives shape urban development. Rather, the market would be allowed to determine the pattern of the urban growth. However, the existing urban areas share some common elements of the urban form with the ancient and medieval cities. These are: number one, networks and networked communities. Ancient as well as modern cities contain an array of pathways to carry flows of people, goods, water, energy, and information. Transportation networks are the largest and most visible of these. Ancient cities relied on streets, most of them quite narrow by modern standards, to carry foot traffic and carts. The modern city contains a complex hierarchy of transportation channels ranging from 10-lane freeways to sidewalks. Modern cities rely on a complex network of utilities. When cities were small, obtaining pure water and disposing of waste was not a major problem. But cities with large populations and high densities require expensive public infrastructure. During the 19th century, rapid urban growth and industrialization caused overcrowding, pollution, and disease in urban areas. After the connection between impure water and disease was established, American and European cities began to install adequate sewer and water systems. Since the late 19th century, cities have been laced with wires and conduits carrying electricity, gas, and communication signals. In the modern cities, the very concept of network has changed. Now it not only relates to trade and transports, but a phenomena in which relations of trade, cultural influence, and power are distributed throughout a complex network of social relations, with cities acting as nodes in the system. At the top of the system, global cities function as administrative centers and magnets of global capital. In the developing world, a city's ultimate economic fate rests on the position of its country in the global political economy. Cities in the developing world are nodes of intersection for the global political economy and the countryside, often attracting global corporations intent on taking advantage of emerging markets. Buildings. Buildings are the most visible element of the city, the features that give each city a unique character. While in ancient cities, the citadel, the palace, and the markets were the main centers of the city planning, and the houses had their organic growth, in modern cities, the residential structures occupy almost half of the urban land, with the building types ranging from scattered single family homes to dense high rise apartments. Commercial buildings are clustered downtown and at various subcenters, with skyscrapers packed into the central business district and low rise structures prevailing elsewhere, although tall buildings are becoming more common into the suburbs. Industrial buildings come in many forms, ranging from large factory complexes in industrial districts to small workshops. City planners engage in a constant search for proper arrangement of these different types of land use, paying particular attention to the compatibility of different activities, population densities, traffic generation, economic efficiency, social relationships, and the height and bulk of the buildings. Open spaces. Open space is sometimes treated as a leftover, but it contributes greatly to the quality of urban life. Hard spaces such as plazas, malls, and courtyards provide settings for public activities of all kinds, are more features of a modern cities. Soft spaces such as parks, gardens, lawns, and nature preserves provide essential relief from harsh urban conditions and serve as space for recreational activities can be found in different forms in both the ancient and modern cities. In modern era, these amenities increasingly influence which cities will be perceived as desirable places to live. Mass production. Since the ancient times, cities are being seen as centers of collection and distribution of surplus production. But in modern times, the cities are the nodes of mass production themselves. As the multiple nuclei model has shown, the cities of the modern times are the centers of production of multiple sectors, both at the small and large scale. Let us discuss about the modern features of residential urban areas. The urban forms as well as the urban planning models originally focused upon the development of the non-residential urban areas, assuming that the residential area would grow organically. But in existing urban areas, the residential areas are more important than the other components of urban form. Therefore, the urban planners have to focus their energies to plan rest of the city, keeping in mind the residential complexes and related facilities. By residence, we do not merely mean the housing complexes, but also the provision of community facilities, amenities, as well as the natural, social, and economic environment. For the provision of community facilities, the cities are characterized by better schools, with all levels ranging from primary to secondary level of education, health facilities providing not merely basic care but well equipped with state of the art facilities related with any specialized branch of medical treatment, child care centers, and the community centers. The modern cities also focus upon optimum land use patterns for sustainable cities. The streets and roads should not only improve the mobility but also ensure the safety of life and environment. Now we can discuss the rise of megacities along with the process of globalization. The new urban revolution, which began in the second half of the 20th century and has gathered pace for a quarter of a century, is going to challenge the relation between the size and the economic role of cities. This revolution is mainly characterized by two divergent phenomena. On one side, the last decade have witnessed the emergence of never-seen growth of a number of megacities, that is, of the cities with more than 10 million inhabitants, most of them being located in less developed countries. In 1950, only two cities in the world exceeded this size, and these cities were New York and London. In 2009, there were 21 megacities. Three-quarters of these cities are located in LDCs. The phenomena concerns more generally the cities with more than 5 million inhabitants, namely the large urban agglomerations, the number of which has been multiplied by 6 between 1950 and 2005. On the other side, the globalization of the post-industrial economy generates a new urban organization where a few number of cities concentrate a disproportionate part of economic power, that is, of economic creation, decision, and control. These global cities, also called the world cities or the world metropolis. More precisely, the global city is defined as a city in a position to realize the economic coordination of complex activities at a global scale. Though it represents only a minor part of these cities' activities, the coordination function is considered as the major character of global cities. It is through that function that they gain their strategic position in the global economy, and the concentration of this function makes them different from other cities. The interesting feature of the growth of modern urban areas is that while new megacities are finding their place in the developing region of the world, the global cities are still mainly concentrated in the developed economies. This is due to the fact that major players of the multinational capital have their headquarters in the developed countries, where more of the specialized services are concentrated, while the manufacturing sector is shifting its base to the less developed regions and the emerging markets. But the common cause of this growth is globalization of economies all across the world. From economics of cities, it can be expected that city size favors city globalization, all the things being equal. This can be explained by increasing returns, diversity, and externalities. The coordination function of global cities rests on advanced specialized services which are subject to increasing returns. They are using high-skilled workers and high interaction abilities. The implementation of these skills and abilities is more efficient at a large scale. It is one of the well-known reasons for the externalization of advanced services and for their concentration in very large cities. Other reasons of this concentration could be added, such as the heavy real estate investment of these firms and the search for urban amenities and high levels of culture and education by their skilled workers. These services are intensive users of information. Their global coordination functions put them in connection with the world. The new information technologies make such interactions quasi-instantaneous and potentially unlimited. However, telecommunication infrastructures, etc., are subject to increasing returns because of important fixed costs, and thus they are not present everywhere but only in very large cities. Thus, we have seen that the processes of globalization, faster innovations in communications technologies have turned the small localized cities to megacities and the global cities, apart from normal growth of urban areas through urban sprawl, shifting of the villages to towns, town adopting the features of the cities, and so on. So students, let us sum up what we have learned from this module. To sum up, we can say that the history of the modern urban areas dates back to 3000 BC, when the cities arise due to a number of economic, social, administrative, as well as strategic reasons. The history of organized city planning is much younger than the city itself. However, the post-industrial society has given a number of urban models which state that the cities have shifted themselves from the grid-drawn plans to spider's web plans, and from a single-centered concentrative model to a multiple nuclei model. Today's cities are home to modern designs, mass production, and headquarters of the global capital. The existing urban areas are rapidly changing their characteristics from organic growths to high-tech megacities and even the global cities in the main centers of the world. So that's all with today's lecture. I hope you must have enjoyed it. Thank you.